So beautiful to be together with you all. We start always with a question that comes in advance from our community and family joining us online through the internet. And then we'll open it up to any questions that anyone here might have. How do I keep consistency in my sadhana as a woman with a moon cycle, a menstrual cycle? How did the ancient yogini arrange their sadhana around their cycles? This was asked by Junko on Instagram. So, all of our ancient yogic traditions are all developed to flow with change. And so whether it's different times of the day, whether it's different seasons, whether it's different parts of the world. So the Ayurvedic and Vedic lifestyle and practices for summer and winter are very different. For evening and morning are very different. It's really only Western, modern, which I put in quotations because most of us think of modern as somehow better, like suppressing in many ways her needs for the needs of the husband and the family. And so the rishis came in and they said, for 4 days, don't let her cook your food. Don't let her be in your bedroom. Don't let her, all the things that she probably would like a rest from anyway. They brought it in as this spiritual science. So if you look at the ancient yoginis, though, rather than the traditional women in household or lifestyles, they too, in so many traditional cultures, not just Indian traditional culture, but a lot of indigenous cultures, the women would go to some place in the woods where they would be alone, a hut, a teepee, a camp, somewhere, a special room, a special home, a special place, not because they were banished in a negative way that tragically it ended up kind of taking on that connotation, but actually because their energy is so strong at that time. The internal energy is so strong. But the physical body could use with a little bit of rest. And so traditionally, spiritually, it was created for the women to be able to honor that time, to honor that cycle, to give the physical body some rest of the day-to-day duties while tapping into the powerful energy. So today, with so much of the modern ways that things have happened, we now have the ability to basically move through our lives and not even really know that we're menstruating. And that's great and wonderful, and it doesn't take into consideration that there is still that energetic shift in the body. So bare minimum, make sure that you're not doing any yogic inversions. Don't go upside down. But also see whether you can't tap into more of that ancient wisdom that says, hey, there's a different flow, there's a different energy right now. Tune into it, tap into it. No, it isn't bad or dirty or toxic or wrong. This was just a way of kind of keeping you free from a lot of duties. But it is different. And allow yourself to recognize that. Tap into it. Dive deep in it. It's the energy of creation. It's the energy of that full moon where things shift. I mean, if you look at the energy literally of the moon on the ocean, high tide, low tide, the impact of a full moon on the seas, we know that that moon cycle gravitationally, energetically has a huge impact. So as women, we have this beautiful opportunity of aligning and tapping into that energy. So use it. Allow yourself to really benefit from that. Great question. Other questions? Any question that anyone here has? Yes. You can just go, there's a microphone right there behind you.
Hi. So nowadays, and we've been hearing a lot that your thoughts and your beliefs tend to create the life that you lead or your reality. How true is it, and how can we create create thoughts or those beliefs that can help us create the life that we want?
Great question. It is most definitely, absolutely true. In Hindi we say, Jaise drishti vaise shrishti. There's a great story of an old sadhu who was sitting along a pathway, and a man walks by and says to him, Baba, tell me about the village up ahead. What's it like? And the Baba says, oh, where are you coming from? And he says, I'm coming from this village down the way, and the people there are just awful. They're liars, they're cheaters, they're thieves. They're just awful people. And the sadhu says, I'm so sorry, because the people up ahead are just as bad, if not worse. And so the man, of course, was bereft, but what's he going to do? There's just one path. He keeps walking. And a short time later, another man walks by, and he says, Baba, tell me about this village up ahead. What is it like? And the sadhu says, where are you coming from? And he says, oh, I'm coming from such and such a village, and the people were just wonderful. Oh my God, such beautiful, beautiful souls. I was so sorry to leave them. And the sadhu says, well, good news. The people in the village up ahead are just as beautiful. You're just going to love them. And there's a young boy who's been sitting there with the sadhu, and he says, Babaji, how is that possible? There's only one village up ahead. And you told the first guy the people are liars and cheaters and thieves. You told the second guy they are really nice, good people. How is that? And the sadhu says, because it's all in their eyes. The first guy saw liars, thieves, and cheaters. Second guy saw beautiful, honest, wonderful people. So that is what we create, absolutely. The way to use that to your advantage is to really choose your thoughts. You know, a lot of us feel like we are victims of our reality. You hear people a lot of times say, well, what did you want me to do? As in, someone insulted me, therefore I had to insult them back, hit them, feel miserable and depressed, be insulted and drown my sorrows in a 6-pack of beer, whatever it is. We all have different stress responses. But there seems to be this belief that somehow if someone insults me, is mean, is rude, well, what do you expect me to do? Like, obviously, I'm going to have a stress response. I'll get angry. I'll be sad. I'll feel hurt. I'll react in some way. But the truth is that we actually have full power, full autonomy, full agency. Just because someone is doing their anger, ego thing doesn't mean that we have to react. Just because someone else has lost themselves in the moment doesn't mean we have to. We have full control over not just our actions, but over our thoughts. If when someone insults you or hurts you, if instead of thinking something like, oh my God, how dare you, or who do you think you are, or I hate you too, or that's really mean, I feel hurt. Instead of that, if you recognize that that person is suffering, because we only give what we have, as I always remind people, if we are sharing and spreading pain and agony, it's because we have pain and agony. So think about it. What if, instead of thinking, I hate you, or that's not fair, or you're mean, or oh my God, I'm miserable, what if instead of that you thought, I hope you get well soon? I mean, just think about how your world would be different. How if any time anybody was mean to you, what you thought was, I hope you get well soon. And that your thought in that moment was just a prayer that may they recover. May they get well soon. Because whatever is going on in their mind that has caused them to be like that is a sense of dis-ease. So what if you just thought, I hope you get well soon? It changes everything. If instead of thinking that you are your body, what it looks like, what it earns, what it can do, what's happened to it, what it's done, if you realize that you are soul, spirit, divinity, consciousness, think about how your entire life changes. In the first case, everything is about getting more, grabbing more, having more, earning more. Because if I'm just this body, well, then I feel very, not quite enough, you know? I mean, the body, it's kind of small, and it's got all things wrong with it, and there's so much it can't do, and you know, the more you think about it, the more we realize, oh my God, so much isn't there. But if instead of identifying as the body, we identify as soul, as spirit, as divinity, well, then there's nothing lacking. Then we recognize that we are just like a variety of flower in a flower garden, or a variety of fruit in a fruit garden that's different than others, but that's perfect in and of itself in its own way. So think about how your life would change if that thought changed. And that's the key. But you have to apply yourself. You have to apply yourself. If your thoughts are all over the place and you can't pay attention, and you can't focus, and you can't be there with your thought and recognize it and see it and be aware of it and therefore choose a different one, then you're stuck, you're a victim. Because then you keep just having thoughts that make you act in certain ways, make you feel certain things. And in terms of actually creating our world, not just creating what we see in it, but actually creating it. Well, of course, if I move through the world angry and suspicious and greedy and judgmental and negative, think I'm going to be very popular? Think I'm going to have a lot of people really wanting to like hang out with me and, you know. So I literally create a negative world. Not because the world is negative, but because through my thoughts I have actually created a situation where no one wants to be with me. People don't do what I want them to do. People don't treat me nicely. But not because people are like that and I'm a victim of it, because I have actually co-created that in the universe. And so our thoughts are very much things, and they absolutely create our world. And you're very young. It's a perfect age to harness that thought. But if you're not present with it, and you don't see what thoughts you're having and what world they are creating for you, then you won't be able to change them. So step one is we become aware of our thoughts. Just watch your thoughts. I saw a great sign once that said, watch your thoughts and you will see the future. So just literally watch your thoughts. Develop a practice, a meditative practice that's just watching your thoughts. Just watch them. It's going to be horribly embarrassing because we all like to think of ourselves as a lot deeper than most of the time we really are. We like to think of ourselves as a lot nicer, a lot more spiritual than most of the time our thoughts are. But just watch them. Notice them. And then, as you see a thought coming, choose something different. Choose love, choose peace, choose to consciously co-create the world you live in. By God, I am going to live in a community, in a society where people are really nice. Well, you don't actually have the power over them. And what you expect draws that out of them. I'll give you one quick example and then we'll move on to the next question. But they did a great study in schools where they went into elementary schools. They did this with young kids. And they divided the students up by the list of their names. They got a list of names from the school roster. So let's say there were 100 children in the class. So they had an alphabetical list of names and they randomly divided the kids. 50 in group A, 50 in group B. And the researchers told the teachers, here is a list of students in group A. And they didn't tell them it was done randomly. They told the teachers, we've given special tests to these kids. And group A are your really bright, gifted, smart kids. Group B are the ones who are not very bright, not very gifted, not so smart. 9-10 months later, at the end of the school year, they tested all the kids. Now remember, the division had been totally random, based only on the names. The researchers never met the kids. They never saw any grades or scores, nothing. End of the year, they gave these kids an assessment exam. And you know what they found? That the kids in group A scored significantly higher than the students in group B. They actually became smarter. And the students in group B became stupider. I mean, it's a really powerful and also very scary study. Because what it shows is, especially in children, but it's true for everyone, that which we expect of someone tends to be that which we get from them. And that the teachers, even though they tried to be neutral and they tried to be equal, they had these very subtle biases. They were expecting the kids in group A to be smarter, to score better. They were expecting the kids in group B to be stupider. And so based on their feedback to these kids, their attention to these kids, their energy to these kids, at the end of the day, on standardized exams, group A students actually were smarter. So not only do we create our own reality, but we actually end up creating a reality for those around us based on how we treat them and what we expect from them. So as parents and as teachers, be really careful and recognize that power, but also recognize it in the rest of your life. When you expect people around you to show up with honesty and integrity and support and niceness and kindness, most of the time they do. And when you expect people to be awful and mean and selfish and incompetent, that's what you tend to get. When you expect yourself, because the same is true for ourselves, when we expect ourselves to be able to achieve something and accomplish something, become something, most of the time we can. But if we keep telling ourselves, you are worthless, you're stupid, you're lazy, you're irresponsible, you're not smart enough, well, that's what you get. So harness the very powerful power of your thoughts, and you will see the future, and you will create the future. Beautiful. Yes. Yes. Yeah, you here in the, yes, you.
Hi, so my question is just based on a little observation. So I've seen a lot of people, or most of people, go to the temple every day in the morning and pray. So don't you think people should rather do something humanitative and help the people? Because wouldn't like God want their children to help the people who are needy? So they can like rather spend time and energy or money, the people who are really needy, than like spending their time in the morning. Or do you think prayers in the morning give them some kind of closure or really help them as well?
Beautiful. Great question. Does God want us to pray or does God want us to serve? So it's both. What does God want? I think mostly God wants us to serve. I think that God really wants us to be vehicles, vessels, channels, instruments for God's flow here on earth. But in order to be able to do that, most of us need the morning prayers, the morning meditation, that morning battery charging. Think of it like a battery charging for your mobile. If you want your mobile to be able to work well during the day, well, you've got to charge it. And that prayer and meditation is the way that we charge ourselves to be able to serve. Otherwise, our ego gets all wrapped up in it. It becomes all about what I'm doing. Then sometimes people get frustrated and it becomes, why do I have to do everything? He's not doing his share. She's not doing her share. This isn't fair. Why is everything up to me? I do all the work. He gets all the credit. And so then even though we may be doing good things, we're not doing them in the way that ultimately the divine wants, that ultimately is the way for our spiritual experience, our spiritual growth. The path of service, what we call karma yoga, is not about give until it hurts, suffer while you're giving, and then give yourself a gold star for giving. It's not about that. It's about recognizing that to give is your very nature. As it said so beautifully, to give the way, the flower gives its fragrance, even to the bottom of the shoe that steps on it. That the dharma of the flower is to be fragrant. Regardless of whether we bend down and smell it and honor it and pray to it, or whether we step on it. Either way, that flower is giving its fragrance because that's its dharma. What our spiritual calling is to serve and to give and to help humanity, absolutely. But not from the place where it's like, hey, over here, I'm the great humanitarian, do you see me? Like, I'm the one. Did you see how many sandwiches I made for the poor today? It's not that. Yeah, the sandwiches help them, it's still good for them. But that's just on the very basic, superficial level. Still worth it to do. If you can only give grudgingly, still give. At least the people you give to benefit. But it's the most superficial, shallow way. The way to give is to recognize, number one, my cup runneth over. I have so much. I have been so blessed. All I want to do is serve. It oozes out of us in our love and in our gratitude. The other way is from a very, very deep spiritual way of recognizing that the other is self, that there is no other. And that in the same way when my stomach is empty and hurts, I feed it. In the same way when your stomach is empty and hurts, I feed it. Not because you're poor and needy and I'm a great humanitarian, but because you are self. And I therefore serve as my spiritual practice. Karma yoga is a spiritual practice. To see the self in others. That's the practice. And so yes, absolutely that's what God wants. Absolutely, I agree with you 100%. If we could take all of the food items that are offered in temples all over the world to the divine and actually offer them to homeless poor people, I have no doubt that God would be not just as happy, but even happier than for them to flow down the drain of a temple or rot in a temple or, just be given back out to people who already have plenty to eat. I have no doubt about that. But the people who do those prayers need to do those prayers to reconnect with God. And so ideally, if I ran the world, I would have a situation in which we still had all of the prayers and the meditation and the bhakti and all of that we do that connects us to the divine, that charges our batteries. But we would use the resources, the money, the food, the energy to serve people. But I think we need both. Because otherwise it becomes, as Pujya Swamiji always says, otherwise service becomes just about egos and logos. And then we're nowhere. We need to really be able to serve without worrying about the ego and the logo. And our spiritual practice is what gives us that. Beautiful. Great question. Yes.
Namaste. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. Um, what does it mean by living in moment, in that very moment? Because sometimes it's past grudges or grief, or sometimes it's future plans and worries. So as a person, as a personality, what does it mean by living in the moment, and how disattachment would work towards it?
Great. So being in the moment is not a denial of or a negation of the past or the future. It isn't a recommendation to recklessness and decadence and hedonism. What it is allowing ourselves to actually have the benefit of the opportunity for peace, for happiness, for enlightenment, because all of those things can only happen in the present moment. If I am lost in this moment, in the past or in the future, neither can I be happy, nor can I be peaceful, nor do I have a chance at attaining awakening, enlightenment. Rishi Kumar thoda sa shant ho jayega, hai na? Do I have a chance of attaining that? We've got to be here in order to have that. We practice it by simply bringing the awareness into this moment. It's what we practice every night here. You just unhook the awareness, and that's really all it is. It's just a conscious, deliberate unhooking of my awareness from where it normally goes. And you give it some place to anchor. And usually we use the breath. It's very easy. It's always with you. It's easy to find. It's inner. And so if you can hook your awareness into your breath, automatically it brings you into this moment. And so that's the practice of just being aware of your breath in every moment. And as you're aware of the breath, you start to become aware of subtler and subtler aspects. So you can be aware people use the physical body also. You can be aware of aspects of the body in the moment. Tightness, looseness, warmth, coldness, alertness, fatigue, contraction, expansion. Just, you notice, just the state of the body. Again, it just brings you into the moment. In that present moment, everything becomes possible. When the mind wanders to the past or the future, you just bring it back. And you just bring it back. And what you'll notice is that actually it becomes very deep. When I speak about it and we say, oh, just be aware of the physical body, the state of it, the feeling state, or be aware of the breath, it sounds very uninteresting. It's like, well, how does happiness come from that? Or how does peace come from that? How does enlightenment come from that? Like, okay, tightness in the body. Like, where does enlightenment show up? But it does because that's actually our natural state. But when we're not in the moment, we're out of our natural state. And so these are all just ways of coming back into this moment. And they're techniques, they're tools, whether it's my physical body, whether it's my breath, whether I'm chanting a mantra, whether I'm staring at a candle flame. It's just a technique to be right here, right now. Because in this moment is all I have. And so you keep coming back. We're not pushing away past or future. We're just grabbing onto the present. Does that make sense? Good. Wonderful. Yeah. Actually, let's come here. Last question. Yes, you. We'll take yours first tomorrow. Kal aapke wale se shuru kare. Yeah, come.
Sometimes I experience joy and happiness. I feel uplifted. I feel connected. I'm full of love and compassion for myself and for others. But then it is like something within hits back. For example, I had this experience yesterday in the Satsang. And then in the night I woke up and had thoughts like, you don't really believe in what you felt yesterday evening, do you? And then I became depressed and was in despair. I felt lonely and everything was dark. And could you please explain what is going on and how to deal with it?
Yeah, sure. So part of this sounds like something that a lot of us suffer from, which has been termed imposter syndrome. Meaning, you have a beautiful experience of joy, of wisdom, of opening, of connection, and you feel like, yeah. And then your mind comes in and says, that's not really you. You're not that spiritual guy. Yeah, you think you had that, but nah, that's not the real thing. That's just, you're faking it. You're faking it. Really who you are is miserable, angry, lonely, resentful. And so it makes you feel like an imposter. We have it in so many areas. You start doing beautiful seva, beautiful service. It feels wonderful, and then suddenly there'll be a voice in your head that's like, you're not really so nice, you know. You're just doing that so people will like you. You're just doing that to cover up your feelings of insecurity. You're just. And it's a very common but very damaging syndrome. So you should feel, number one, like you're in good company. Everyone I know goes through this. If you only knew who I really was, you wouldn't like me so much. Right? If you only knew who I really was, you wouldn't think I was such a good person. It's that sense of you're not all of these good things. You're not your experiences, these good experiences. You're not your spiritual experiences. You're not your wisdom. You're not your generosity. You're not your kindness. You're not your ability. You're just faking it. So you're in very good company. We'll call it just a game of the mind. It stems, I think, a lot by the ego's fear of essentially being dismantled. The ego works very well when we are afraid, angry, desiring. The ego works in separation. So if I can feel separate from the world, lonely, upset, angry, resentful, jealous, well, my ego's really happy. It's got a lot to chew on. There's a lot to do. If I'm in a state of oneness, well, the ego doesn't know what to do with itself. And it becomes like that restless, you know, people sometimes they sit there and their leg like bounce, like at a dining table, people, their leg just bounces up and down all the time at the table. They're restless. There's an inability to be in that moment. On an unconscious level, which is why their leg is shaking. But think about the ego like that. The ego is essentially shaking inside like, what do I do now? And so it needs to create a little bit of drama. It needs to bring you back into separation. Thou shalt doubt thyself. Then the ego knows what to do with that. It's very good at being critical of yourself, of others. Just recognize it. When it arises, greet the ego. Imagine that you had a young, relatively harmless, not completely harmless, but not murderous, next door neighbor's son or daughter, who was just kind of a little annoying rascal, who used to just like to come over all the time and sort of play practical jokes on you and knock on your door and then run away, or, do just annoying things. Well, when they come by, you're not going to kill them. You're not going to scream profanities at them. But you're also not going to turn over the keys to your house, because they're a little rascal. You could come back and find God knows what situation in your house when you come back. So you're going to greet them. You're going to say something like, thanks for coming by today. Actually, I was just on my way out. Have a good day. Nice to see you. Do your parents know you're out so late? Just do the same with the ego. Whenever something like that arises, just greet it. Ah, imposter syndrome. Haven't seen you in a few hours. Thanks for stopping by for a chat, but you know what? I'm actually busy right now. Because I'm actually in a moment of feeling beautiful oneness and peace and joy. So I don't actually have time to sit down and chat. But I'll let you know when I've got some spare time. And just play with it gently, lovingly. Because remember, it's all part of you. So you don't want to start a World War III within yourself. But you also don't want to allow the damaged, dysfunctional parts of our psyche to take over the reins of the show. And so just like the slightly damaged, dysfunctional child of the neighbor, hey, sweetheart, all right, here, no problem. Have a cookie, but I'm running out. And just greet the ego like that. But don't turn over the keys to your mind. Allow that real inner knowing to reemerge. Beautiful. Beautiful. Have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your evening, everyone.